Welcome to the land far away, where we discuss culture from a certain point of view. Film critics don't have a good reputation nowadays. They get accused of needlessly politicizing movies, being out of touch with the audience, or being straight out corrupted by studios. I'm not here to tackle this mess of a subject though. What I would like to do is to lift your spirits up, and show that the current state of film criticism in America is not as bad as it could be. In order to do so, let's travel space and time, to the Soviet Union, and read through an actual review of the first Star Wars movie, or Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, as it's known nowadays. The review was published in 1977 in Literary Gazette, which was, and still is a very respectable publication, initially founded in 1830, and then revived in 1929. The writer behind this wonderful piece of criticism is Yulia Warshawskaya. The column is called Mass Culture 77, while the review is entitled Space Horror Movies.
That's no moon.
It's also quite telling that the text was published in a section called Their Sensations. This name sounds derogatory, and it is. It's not our glorious Soviet high art, but their sensations. You know, it's like writing about anime in a column titled Japanese Nonsense. Right from the start, a reader knows to hold expectations low. Before we start, let's address two things. First of all, you know how sometimes angry viewers push back against critics by saying that they probably haven't even seen the movie they're reviewing. Well, in case of Miss Warshawskaya, it's actually true. A New Hope didn't hit the theaters in the Soviet Union until 1990. Prior to that, there were pirate copies on VHS available. Those had a specific charm, to say the least.
Я ждал тебя, Оби-Ван. Вот мы встретились наконец. Круг замкнулся. Когда я покинул тебя, я был учеником, а теперь я. Учитель зла, не больше.
Anyway, no, Warshawskaya did not see the movie, as it will become obvious pretty soon. She most likely based her review on French reviews. Secondly, if you don't like film critics pushing certain ideology, then take into consideration that in the Soviet Union, there existed no alternative. The country adhered strictly to its official art style known as socialist realism, and compliance was obligatory. Whether in writing, painting, or filmmaking, one had to adhere to its principles, which primarily encompassed the portrayal of communist values. Foreign art was either criticized for not fitting this ideology, or it was appropriated. This phenomenon was particularly noticeable in literary translations. Take for instance, the Soviet rendition of Arthur Miller's The Crucible, where the segment criticizing intolerance and witch hunts, while extolling freedom of speech, was outright cut, presumably to avoid unfavorable comparisons with Soviet conditions. Similarly, in Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, much of the content suggesting American farmers' prosperity was expunged. Again, because you wouldn't want to draw comparisons. Showing successful alternatives to communism was a big no-no. All art is political, as believed by the communists. The cinema, according to Lenin, is the most important art form when it comes to spreading ideology. He said this in 1922. He had quite a hunch. To sum up, this is why Soviet film critics had to review movies through ideological lens. So, let's delve in and examine the review. It kicks off with a bang. This summer, American theaters were hit with a new wave of cinematic psychosis. It's interesting how Beatlemania and Hulkmania sound cool, but Star Wars psychosis doesn't evoke a pleasant image. Yet, that's precisely the point. Furthermore, the movie isn't titled Star Wars, but rather War of the Stars, like in French or Spanish. This reinforces my assumption that Warshawskaya's review draws from those published in France. Continuing, War of the Stars captivates the audience, raking in a staggering $60 million within the initial month. Screenings span from morning until midnight, attracting throngs of people to packed auditoriums. To catch the movie, one must either endure hours of queuing, or purchase a ticket from a reseller for a fabulous fee of $50, an equivalent of $245 in today's terms. This passage aims to underscore the moral decay within American society. Not only is this a sign of corruption, but also of stupidity. After all, who would willingly shell out such a huge amount for a movie ticket? The review then proceeds. After American movies about an evil force, mass catastrophes, and giant sharks, now comes a horror of cosmic proportions, about monstrous tyrants terrorizing our galaxy. Firstly, isn't it intriguing that Star Wars is seriously treated here like a horror movie, being compared to films like The Exorcist and Jaws? Secondly, our galaxy. Doesn't Star Wars begin with the line, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away"? Anyway, let's not focus on that, because now comes the best part of the review, which is the list of characters who fight this evil tyrant. Our heroes include some chubby-faced princess, a country boy, an old knight of the round table, a monkey man, and 2 robots. I hear you, they are called droids, not robots. Curiously, 3PO and R2-D2 are the only characters mentioned by name. Furthermore, we discover that R2 resembles a car and communicates via space signals. The only hero we get to see is a stormtrooper. You know, the protagonist everyone loves. How about the plot summary? According to French journal Express, it's a rather primitive one. Well said. Of course, when you think of Star Wars, not only do monkey men and knights of the round table come to mind. You might ask, what about lightsabers? To the citizen's great horror, the film creators employ the perfect weapon, a laser beam, which characters wield like a rapier. Oh yes, the horror. Speaking of horror, the screen is filled with nightmarish monsters. A lizard man, faceless dwarfs, a living mummy with pipes on its head. Fantastic creatures. Gold. I hope Disney is listening. Now that we have an idea of what to anticipate from the movie, let's revisit the financial aspect. Warshawskaya then shifts her attention to merchandise. She notes that alongside the movie, a novel, comic books, t-shirts, posters, and toys are set for release. You will have the opportunity to purchase a miniature R2-D2 and a golden 3PO. However, disappointingly, she adds, a toy laser rapier has not yet been developed, but they are already working on it. Is she referring to a toy version, or an actual functional lightsaber? Could this be a commentary on American militarism? Probably. We might soon witness US Marines wielding lightsabers. On a brighter note, you'll be pleased to know that the tale of a chubby-faced princess and a village boy will persist. According to Warshawskaya, a sequel to War of the Stars will be unveiled in just a few weeks. 2 Star Wars movies in a single year? However, do not raise your expectations too high. She quips, it is highly probable that it will be as middling in quality as it will be lucrative. If you've been pondering all this while, how such a feeble and horrifying movie could become a resounding success among the American audience, your wondering ends here. The review wraps up with an explanation. The mass viewer eagerly consumes such art pieces, because once they exit the screening room, they experience a sensation of greater tranquility on the outside. In simpler terms, life in America is so distressing, that hordes of Americans subject themselves to watching horror films like Star Wars, as it's only then they can feel a semblance of safety. Life in the US might be tough, but at least it doesn't match the horror of the movies. Meanwhile, life in the Soviet Union was a fairy tale, as we all know. Because of that, there were no Soviet horror movies. This genre was forbidden, so the first modern Russian horror, I'm not counting ones released before 1917, was Monsters. A 1993 flick about an invasion of giant animals. But that's a good story for another time. Warshawskaya's review marked the initial one, though certainly not the sole one. Other Soviet film critics offered their intriguing remarks as well. Unfortunately, matters didn't improve with time. One critic even compared Star Wars to a Nazi manifesto. Apparently, concluding a discussion by branding the other person a Nazi never goes out of fashion. That's all I got for you today. Thanks for sticking around. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment if you would like to see more.